Zara pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the damaged escape pod. Her heart beat fast as she heard the heavy boots of human soldiers getting closer. The blue light from her broken control panel made scary shadows on her face. She had heard all the stories about humans. They were violent creatures who killed first and asked questions later. Her people, the Villani, had been at war with Earth for 3 long years. Every Villani child knew to fear the sight of human ships. The footsteps stopped right outside her pod door. Zara closed her eyes and waited for death. She had seen what humans did to her people in the prison camps. The torture, the experiments, the cold way they treated alien life. A loud bang echoed through the pod as something heavy hit the door. Zara jumped and her hands shook. She tried to reach for her weapon, but her arm was broken from the crash landing. Blood ran down her forehead, and her vision was getting blurry. The door made a hissing sound as it slowly opened. Steam poured in from outside, and Zara could see the outline of a tall figure in the doorway. The figure wore the dark uniform of a human military officer with bright medals on his chest. Lieutenant Jake Miller stepped into the pod and stopped when he saw Zara. His hand was on his weapon, but he did not pull it out. He had never seen a Villani up close before. She was smaller than he expected, with pale blue skin and large silver eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Zara looked up at the human and waited for him to shoot her. Instead, he slowly raised his hands to show he was not holding a weapon. His face was calm, not angry like she expected. The human said something in his language, but Zara did not understand. She only knew a few human words. The universal translator in her pod was broken like everything else. Jake noticed the blood on her head and the way she held her arm. He had been trained to capture or kill any enemy aliens he found, but something about this one made him pause. She looked young and scared, not dangerous. He pulled out his medical scanner and pointed it at her. Zara thought it was a weapon and closed her eyes tight, waiting for pain. Instead, she felt nothing. The scanner beeped softly as it checked her injuries. Jake looked at the results on his scanner. The alien had a broken arm, a concussion, and several cuts. She needed medical help soon or she might die. He had a choice to make: follow his orders and capture her, or help save her life. He made his decision quickly. Jake pulled out his emergency medical kit and slowly approached Zara. She opened her eyes and watched him with fear and confusion. He held up bandages and medicine and spoke in a gentle voice, even though she could not understand his words. Zara was shocked when the human began cleaning her cuts instead of hurting her. His touch was careful and gentle, not rough like she expected. He wrapped her broken arm in a special cast that made the pain go away. As Jake worked on her injuries, he kept talking to her in a soft voice. Zara began to relax a little. This human was not acting like the monster from her people's stories. He was helping her, like she was a person, not an enemy. When Jake finished treating her wounds, he sat back and looked at her. Zara stared back, not sure what would happen next. The human reached into his pack and pulled out a water bottle. He offered it to her, and she took it with shaking hands. The water was cool and clean, better than anything she had tasted in weeks on her damaged ship. Zara drank it slowly and felt some strength return to her body. The human watched her and nodded. When she finished, Jake tried to communicate using hand signals. He pointed to himself and said, Jake then pointed to her with a questioning look. Zara understood and pointed to herself, saying Zara in her musical voice. They sat in silence for a while, looking at each other. Both wondered what the other was thinking. Zara had never imagined a human could be kind. She had been taught that they were all evil creatures who hated aliens. Jake had also been told that aliens were dangerous and could not be trusted. But this young female did not seem dangerous at all. She seemed lost and afraid, just like any person would be after a crash. The sound of more boots outside made them both look toward the door. Jake's radio crackled with the voice of his commanding officer asking for a report. Jake knew he should tell them about finding the alien prisoner. Instead, he made another choice that would change both their lives forever. Jake turned off his radio and looked at Zara. He pointed to himself, then to her, then made a gesture like they should leave together. Zara did not understand at first, but when Jake stood up and offered his hand, she realized he wanted to help her escape. She stared at his hand for a long moment. This human was willing to risk his own safety to help her. She took his hand and let him help her stand. Jake supported her weight. As they moved toward the back of the pod where there was an emergency exit, he had noticed it when he first entered. Jake opened the exit hatch and looked outside. The area was clear, but they would need to move fast. His fellow soldiers would search. The whole crash site. Soon Jake helped Zara climb out of the pod and they began walking into the forest. As they walked, Jake stayed close to Zara to help her when she stumbled. Her injuries made it hard to walk, but she did not complain. The human soldier was risking everything to help her and she did not want to slow him down. They walked for hours through the thick trees. Jake used his knowledge of the area to keep them away from patrol routes. He shared his food and water with Zara and helped her rest when she was tired. As night fell, they found a small cave hidden behind some rocks. Jake checked to make sure it was safe, then helped Zara sit down inside. He gathered some dry leaves to make a soft place for her to sleep. Zara watched. The human worked to make her comfortable. She had never seen such kindness from an enemy. Before today, she would have said it was impossible. But here was proof that not all humans were the monsters her people believed them to be. Jake sat near the cave entrance to keep watch while Zara rested. He thought about what he had done and what it would mean for his future. He was now a deserter and a traitor to his own kind. But he could not bring himself to regret his choice. The next morning, Jake woke Zara gently and they continued their journey. He was taking her toward the neutral zone where she might find a way back to her own people. It was dangerous, but it was her best chance. As they traveled, Zara tried to learn some human words and Jake tried to learn some of hers. They laughed at their mistakes and slowly began to understand each other better. By the third day, Zara was feeling much better thanks to Jake's medical supplies and careful attention. She watched him as he navigated through the wilderness and realized how much he was giving up for her. That evening, as they rested by a small stream, Zara tried to tell Jake how grateful she was. She touched her chest and said thank you in broken English, then pointed to him. Jake smiled and said, "You're welcome." Jake knew they were getting close to the neutral zone and that soon they would have to say goodbye. The thought made him sad in a way he had not expected. He had grown to care about this alien woman. On their last night together, they sat by a small fire. Jake had made Zara look at the human who had saved her life and changed everything she believed about his people. She wished she could somehow repay his kindness. The next morning, they reached the edge of the neutral zone. Zara could see ships from her people in the distance. Jake had kept his promise and brought her to safety. Now it was time for them to part ways. Before she left, Zara took off a small pendant she wore around her neck. It was made from a special crystal from her homeworld and was very precious to her. She placed it in Jake's hand and closed his fingers around it. Jake understood this was her way of saying thank you. He wished he had something to give her in return instead. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. They looked into each other's eyes, knowing they would probably never meet again. Zara walked away toward her people's ships, turning back once to wave at Jake. He watched until she was safely aboard one of the Villani vessels. Then he turned and began his long journey back. Jake never told anyone what really happened to the alien in the crash pod. He reported that he found no survivors, and the wreckage was empty. His superiors accepted his report, and he was never questioned. Years later, the war between humans and Villani ended with a peace treaty. Many said it was because both sides had grown tired of fighting, but Jake knew the real reason. He had heard that a young Villani woman had spoken to her people about human kindness. She had convinced many of her kind that not all humans were evil, that peace was possible if they could see each other as people, not monsters. Jake still carried Zara's crystal pendant with him everywhere he went. It reminded him that sometimes the most important choices are the ones that go against everything you have been taught. Zara had become an ambassador for peace, working to build bridges between their peoples. She often thought about the human soldier, who had saved her life and shown her that enemies could become friends. Both of them had learned that day in the forest that being human or alien did not matter as much as being kind. The war had tried to make them hate each other, but instead, they had found hope. Their brief time together had changed the course of history, proving that even in the darkest times, one person's choice to show mercy could light the way toward a better future for everyone.